Alrighty, Lumberjacks, welcome back to another Greenhorn's Guide to Logging and Forestry. So last time we were playing, we had just showed the operation of the skidder and how to bring all of the bunched wood back to the landing so that we can start processing. So in this episode, we're going to review the processor. Now, the processor, which is this head on here, the purpose of this machine, I'm just going to lower this guy down here so we can take a look at it. I'll turn a light on too. So the purpose of this machine is to pick up these logs, cut them, delimb them, and leave them in a length of your choosing so that they can be loaded. So what happens is when you grab them, there's all these little sticks and limbs on them. So when you pull, or when you start cutting into the log, you pulls the log through this head, and all these little sharp knivey bits will carve off all of the limbs so that you have a nice clean log that's ready to be loaded onto a truck. This thing also lets you cut to specified lengths. So if you want to do really long logs to be loaded or really short logs to be loaded, that gives you the option to do that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut half the pile into short logs and half the pile into long logs so that we can kind of show the operation of both and loading for the next video. All right, so this is how we do it. I'm going to show you guys my technique for how I process, but it's entirely up to you how you guys want to do things. I don't like to say there's not one way to do anything for logging. There's all kinds of different techniques. I'm just going to grab this piece right here, and I'm just going to flip it around so that it's proper in our pile. So the way I do things, and this is particularly how I do it in this game, you can do it however you want, is I always process from my right side to my left side. In every situation I always process right to left. If you're more comfortable processing left to right, that's entirely fine. It's entirely up to you how you want to operate. But this is basically where I start. I'll always start at the end of the pile, so the last log here. So that way I can back up and work my way backwards and make piles as I go. So to process a piece of wood, you need to go in to the log and use these little claws on the back here. So I'm by the time you see this video, I think this machine will be just one claw that closes at the same time. But right now in this video, I have the secondary claw that opens. So we're just gonna go with the basic way of doing things. So you want to grab the tree like so. You want to turn on your head by hitting B. Once your head is up and operational, you can choose what length you want to cut to. Whoops, I pushed the wrong button there. You can choose what length you want to cut to. So we're going to cut to, let's see here. How about a 5? 5 is probably lots. Okay, so we make our first cut on the log. And there we go. So that's a pretty good short log right there. Now, in order to see, you guys can't see it because it's on my other monitor. In order to see the lengths, there's this little help menu that pops up on the far left-hand side of your screen. And that little help menu shows you all the different lengths you can cut to. So you can zoom through it and choose your cut length. So in this case, I'm cutting to a 5-meter log. So what I want to do is I want to pull this through, and I want to pile it kind of right almost in front of me, maybe off a little bit to the left, and then cut. Now, it's important when you go to pick up these logs that when you grab them, you pick them up and you grab them, you pick them up, and you want to be lined up with the actual saw blade itself. So if this log is pushed back too far this direction, it won't cut it. So it needs to be forward and in line with the blade so that you can actually make a snip in that log. Right about there. And then anything you run out after will go that way. So now you can decide if you want to keep these tinier, scrawnier pieces or not. I'm going to keep them because it's actually a pretty decent sized piece of wood. And then you go to your next one. Oop, slip that out of there. And like you said, as I cut them, all these little bits fall into a pile here, which we'll have to clean up eventually. So we'll go cut this. Now you want to keep these piles as nice as possible and as straight as possible because it'll make it way easier for the next job, which is loading after this. So we're just going to grab a bunch of these and we're just going to keep cutting them up here. Now, short logs are much easier to pile because you can leave them in these nice little rows and it stays pretty tight. So like I said, now we have a little piece of wood that's stuck in there from the end of it, and it's just a tiny little scrap piece. So now, depending on what you want to do, it's your choice. Generally what I'll do is I'll leave these in a scrap pile right here. So I'll just turn the head on and then off again, and you can just drop them right here. Or if you don't want them there, you can run it out and shoot it over there, or, you know, it's your choice. But I don't generally put these little tiny pieces in the pile because it doesn't commute very well when you're trying to load them later. So we're just going to keep chopping these guys up. There we go. Excellent. And like I said, you can process as much as you want, as many piles as you want. But we're just going to do a little pile of short logs. We should actually put a separation in our pile somewhere. Let's make it about here. Well, actually, long logs will be a little bit more. We'll want more long logs. So let's push that back there. And actually, we should save the big ones. So let's cut the little guys into shorts here. And then we'll save those big ones for our other side there. And again, see, we got these scrap pieces, so I just drop them in the scrap pile. And to do that dropping thing that I'm doing, all you got to do is just turn the head on by hitting B or off, and it'll fall out of the head, and then just hit B again to turn your head back on. And I'm going to save those big pieces because they make way better long logs. So we're just going to keep chopping here. And again, the technique for processing and the just, you know, getting used to the feeling for it, that will come with time. It's obviously easier for me because I've done this for a long time. But for somebody starting new, this might be a little bit harder to figure out, to get the motions down and all that stuff. So that's another big one. So we're going to save that because that's actually really excellent for a long log. And the monotony of processing, you can do this for hours. It's actually, I find it really fun. There's a lot of people who don't like processing, but I find it quite entertaining to make your piles and plan your little areas out. I think it's quite fun. And you'll hear a variety of different people who like it and don't like it. So, like I said, as we're going here, we're kind of working from the front to the back. I see other guys who like to work from the back forward, and I mean, if you have a technique that works for that, by all means. There is no 100% right or wrong answer to anything in this when it comes to logging, so it's entirely up to you what you want to do. There we go. I'll do that one. I actually might, I'm just going to do these last two logs for shorts because they're very straightforward for loading. Okay, so there we go. I won't have to do too much of a description on how to load these because it'll be really easy. The longs, on the other hand, it's a little bit more technique involved. Sometimes, depending on the operator. Okay, so let's cut this one. And that'll be good for a nice little short log pile. Might not fill a whole bunk, but that's okay. There we go. Now let's start a long pile. So now I'm going to shift through, and we're going to choose a much longer size. How about that? So 12 meters. Let's go up to 14. So we're going to do a 14-meter tree cut. And like I said, you guys can't see that menu on the far left because it's on my other monitor. But on your screen, you'll see a big help menu. If you don't know how to use that help menu, just hit F1. It kind of turns it on and off so you can see it. All right, so now we're going to cut 14-meter longs. Now, these ones run out a lot further. Like I said, they go way out there. So we're just going to leave this on the ground here. And now you kind of got one that's not probably going to be as long. So I'll usually start a second pile behind it. So I'll put the long ones to the front, and then I'll put the shorter ones kind of to the back, and you can actually separate this a bit. There you go. And this part of things, like, this is entirely up to you how organized you want to keep your landing. There's no rule to how you want to do it. I'm just showing you kind of how I've been doing it and how other people have adopted based on the way we've been doing it in our series. So I'm going to drop this guy here. And another big long piece. These are big logs, so this is good. And then we'll have this little short one that's left behind, and I usually just shoot those over into that side. And I'll show you why after here for sure, because there's some definite technique to loading some of this stuff for sure. And we'll put the big guys up at the front here. Beauty. And the little guys over at the back. And like I said, see, now that we're working back from the back of the road to the front, we're not running over all our own feet, so to speak. It's a lot easier to control. I'll put these kind of half long ones over here. Oops. You got to kind of sort through them here. There we go. And then as we go, we start to build kind of a big nasty pile of pieces, as you can see. So what you can do is you can just slide it all up with using a log if you want, or use your head to push it up. I usually try to keep my pile away from my good wood. So I keep all my garbage over in that pile. And then what we'll do after is we usually use the forestry grinder to run it all over and cut it up. To keep your landing nice and clean. Because the more bits and pieces you leave in the game, the more the performance hit is on your computer. So if you have a lower quality computer, leaving these big piles all over the place actually really hurts your frame rate performance. I try to cut, also important, I try to cut as close up to the end as possible. But sometimes, you know, depending on the way things are going or how fast you're working, you may not have that option. So like even that's not too bad of an end to leave. But some people might want to get a little closer to the end, or some people might want to cut back further. It's entirely up to you. It's all technique. Like I said, I can sit here and tell you the right and wrong way to do stuff, but it's not really, there isn't really a right and wrong way. It's just more waste or less waste. Doesn't really matter. The point is to just kind of have fun with it and do your thing. So I'm going to process all of this pile. We'll try to get as much as we can here for our truckload. And like I said, I'm keeping these big ones at the front. So actually, I could probably even roll that over a little. I'm keeping these big ones at the front and then the little ones kind of at the back. Just because that allows me, when I'm loading, to keep a nice even separation. And then there's less work for me to do. I'm actually going to put this one over here. There we go. And like I said, once we get to the loading video, I'll show you exactly why I'm separating them like this. So bigger stuff. So this is a little bit of a bigger size. So I'm going to run this one real close here. And drop it in the big pile. And then we got a little bit left. So we shoot the little one over here. There we go. And we'll just keep piling these up here. And depending on how many trees you brought to the landing, you can sometimes be doing this for days and days. Processing is a awesome, fun, relaxing thing to do. So, and like I said, the technique I'm using now is just the technique I have. You guys can do whatever you want, but this is the easiest way to keep your landing nice and organized and clean. And like I said, once you start playing, if you start playing in multiplayer with other guys, you'll learn that you guys kind of all have to follow these procedures because it's the only way everybody works well together. Because like I said, in our multiplayer ones, while I'm processing, normally there's other guys bringing more skids in, and there's guys loading, and you have to keep it all organized. It's very fun though, just to be able to create an organized little world. So I'll throw this one over here. Oh, here we get some big ones finally. There we go. And we want to put these big ones to the front. And the big ones are going to be what builds the base of the load, which we will more than likely get into here soon in the next episode. See, now when I'm grabbing these, when I cut them, I drag them over to this pile, and then I make my first cut. That one didn't drop anything, but normally that way it keeps it so it drops it in the pile for me. That way you're not leaving a big mess everywhere. And then short guys on that side, long ones on this side. Only got 3 trees left. Holy, thankfully, hey. And use these little tongs at the back to grab it. And like I said, I think by the time you guys get this video, these won't be separate, because I found that there's not really a use for having them separate anymore. And I get a lot of people who just want them to open at the same time. So I'm going to change that, so it'll make processing operation a little bit easier for you guys. There we go. Oops. And then you don't have that issue. So there we go. Last log. And like I said, it's good to keep your piles like this stuff here cleaned up. I'll show you a technique that we started doing in multiplayer, actually. It's really nice. So if we take like one of these little sticks, you can probably find a bigger stick, but you can actually just drop it on the ground. Actually, this one might be a little too small. And then grab it, and you can actually push the pile. This one's actually a little too small. Here, let's cut one of these pieces here. I don't really care about these. So there we go. Oops. So what I'll do is almost like kind of a broom effect. So I'll drop it on the ground, grab it from as far away as I can, and then I just push them all into this little pile here. This is kind of what we started doing. It helps keep things clean. And again, you don't have to do this stuff. This is just what I do to keep my world nice and clean and nice and organized. Everyone can do whatever they feel they want to do. And then you can either save this stick and put it, over here somewhere, which I normally do, and then use that as the pusher stick. Another attachment that you can get for this machine, I'm not going to go over it in the series because it is a very simple thing, but there's another attachment you can buy called the forestry grinder. This guy here. And basically it's just a big grinder that attaches onto the front of either the skidder or whatever machine. You hit B, turns it on, and then you just drive into this pile, and it would just vaporize all this wood so that it's all cleaned up off the map. Yeah. Anyway, so that's it. So now we got our long load waiting here. We have like a very small short log pile, because I was just going to give you a quick demonstration for the loading for shorts, because there's not a lot of stuff that goes into that. And then we'll go over to longs as well. So yeah, this is the entire processor operation. And again, you guys can do whatever technique works for you the best, but this is the one that I found to keep the landing the cleanest and keep it organized and easier for loading. So yeah, next video we'll be going over the actual loading of the logs onto the trucks. So we'll catch you in the next one.